I, Karen Bass,
I, Karen Bass,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of California,
the Constitution of the State of California.
Uh, I felt definitely overwhelmed. But, since May, or really since the election in February, I've just had a tremendous amount of support and welcome and goodwill. So I'm very excited about serving in the role.
You are someone who has certain interests that particularly are important to you. Foster care is one of them. Tell me about foster care.
Well, actually, I became interested in the foster care issue in the late 80s when we had an explosion around crack cocaine. And that's when the foster care system really expanded rapidly. And it was because crack was the first time you had a drug epidemic that affected women and men equally. Hadn't happened before. And so you had families falling apart. And so my concern is that this is a population now as a state legislator. When we remove kids from their home, really the state becomes the parent. And I became very concerned that the state could be charged, frankly, with abuse and neglect in terms of how it's managed its system. And so when I was contemplating running for office, one of the motivating factors was I could go to Sacramento and focus on transforming the foster care system.
In your dreams, what would foster care in California look like?
I think foster children would be treated and seen as our children, meaning that all of the benefits, the advantages of being in a stable, working class, middle class home would be afforded the children in the foster care system. Let me just give you an example. There is one child that I have gotten to know during the time I've been in the legislature, and she's now 18. She was in the foster care system from the time she was 2. She was moved 66 times. Now, she was in 66 different foster homes. Can you imagine her ever feeling a sense of stability in her life? And so we should treat the children in foster care just as we would expect our own to be treated.
How do you relate to Governor Schwarzenegger? He is, simply by his name alone, one of the best-known politicians in the country. He is across the aisle from you in terms of political party. How do you get along?
I get along fine with the governor. I started working with him 2 or 3 years ago on the foster care issue, and it was something that I brought to his agenda that he was very supportive of then, and he continues to be now. I'm trying to work with him now on forming a tax commission, which is another idea that he supports. We'll form an independent tax commission that will look at how we have revenue in the state of California, how we stabilize things so that year after year we're not in these boom and bust cycles. Right now we have a $15 billion deficit. If we had a more stable stream of revenue coming into the state, we wouldn't be in the crisis that we're in right now.
Describe to me an interaction, a meaningful interaction that you've had with one of your constituents, which is really all of California, about the economic crisis that's going on right now.
Well, it has been a conversation where I think the most important point in the conversation is to get the average Californian to understand that this fiscal crisis is different. And so interacting with people, number one, to inform them about the crisis, to talk to them about the impact of cutting education and cutting health care, what that means to their daily lives. For example, 800,000 children might have to go without health insurance. 30,000 teachers might be laid off unless we are able to close the gap in a way where we bring money to the table. We don't just try to close the gap through cutting programs. Then that's, most important.
What about race relations? And I don't just mean, do we all get along? I mean,
we don't.
I mean the long-term ability of California to synthesize its role as the biggest diverse state in America and set a path that is hopeful for other parts of the country.
Well, actually, I mean, I think California, and I was kidding somewhat when I said we don't get along, because obviously there's examples where we don't, but there's many more examples of where we do get along. And just taking the legislature, for example, California's legislature, and there's 120 of us, by the way, 80 in the Assembly, 40 in the Senate, is one of the most diverse legislative bodies in the nation. And that's why I'm concerned about things like the redistricting measure that's on the ballot, Proposition 11, because I'm worried that it could harm and reduce that diversity. I worked for many years before joining the legislature. I formed a community coalition in 1990, and that was intentionally formed as an African American and Latino organization. I've been gone for 4 years, but the organization is carrying on very strong. It's 18 years old now, and this is an organization where almost an entire generation of youth have been raised with a complete consciousness of their history, both black and brown, and the unity in that history. And those are stories that I believe are not told enough. We always focus on the conflict. We know where we don't get along, but we need to promote the examples of where we are working together successfully much more.
You suffered a tragic loss when your daughter was killed in a car accident. How did you pick yourself up and keep doing your work after that?
Well, it was 2006, and, you just do. Some people have said to me, how was I able to get over it and continue on? I haven't gotten over anything. It is with me every single day. It is what I think about every morning I wake up. It is what I think about every day before I go to bed. Her presence is very much in my life, and it wasn't just my daughter, it was also my son-in-law as well, and I lost them at the peak of their life. And so I, like millions of other parents, manage. You don't get over it, you just manage.
If you could take your magic wand and wave it over California and see what happened in 10 years, what would you be most proud of?
I would be most proud of having made a significant contribution to transforming the foster care system. And if I could leave office in 2010 and think that I had made a contribution toward stabilizing the tax structure in this state so that we don't have to cut vital programs that protect the most vulnerable Californians, then I could say it was worthwhile being a politician.
Oh, Speaker Bass, thank you so much.